Edith, I can't believe you did this. My mother-in-law's voice was sharp, her face a mask of disbelief. I stood there, clutching the letter that revealed Mark's secret life. My world shattered in that instant. What is the meaning of this? Gloria demanded, snatching the letter from my trembling hands. Before I could respond, Mark stormed into the room, his expression thunderous. What's going on here? I swallowed hard, my throat constricting with a mix of anger and heartbreak. How long have you known? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark's eyes narrowed. None of your business, Edith, he retorted, turning away. Gloria thrust the letter at him. Explain this, Mark. Your wife has uncovered your little secret. Mark's jaw tightened as he scanned the contents. It's not what you think, he muttered, refusing to meet my gaze. Not what I think, I echoed, my voice rising. This letter details your affair with Michelle, a woman half my age. Watch your tone, Edith, Gloria snapped. This is a family matter. I whirled on her, my composure cracking. A family matter? While your son was gallivanting around with his mistress, I was here, holding everything together, Mark scoffed. Don't act so innocent. You've been a cold, distant wife for years. Because you've been emotionally absent. I shot back. Late nights, unexplained absences. It all makes sense now. Gloria stepped between us, her eyes flashing. Enough of this nonsense. We will not let this ruin our family's reputation. I stared at her, incredulous. Reputation? Your son has been carrying on an affair, and you're worried about reputation? You've always been a poor excuse for a wife, Gloria sniped. No wonder Mark strayed. Yet I'm the one holding this family together, I replied calmly, my anger hardening into resolve. Mark laughed bitterly. Is that what you think? You're delusional, Edith. I met his gaze, unflinching. No, Mark. I'm finally seeing clearly, and I'm done living a lie. Gloria's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare leave this family. I straightened my shoulders, a newfound strength surging through me. Watch me. Turning on my heel, I strode out of the room, leaving my shattered marriage behind. It was time to start living for myself and my son, Peter. No more lies, no more toxic relationships. A new chapter was beginning, and I was ready to embrace it, come what may. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of Mark's betrayal pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. Memories of our once happy marriage flickered through my mind, taunting me with what could have been. How did we reach this point? I thought bitterly. The signs had been there all along. The late nights, the unexplained absences, the growing emotional distance. But I had chosen to turn a blind eye, desperate to preserve the illusion of a perfect family. Gloria's words echoed in my head, each one a dagger to my heart. You've always been a poor excuse for a wife. No wonder Mark strayed. Tears stung my eyes as I recalled the countless sacrifices I had made for this family, putting my own dreams and aspirations aside to be the dutiful wife and mother. And what did I have to show for it? A cheating husband and a manipulative mother-in-law who delighted in twisting the knife deeper. A soft knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. Mom? Peter's voice was tentative, laced with concern. I hastily wiped my eyes and cleared my throat. Come in, sweetheart. Peter slipped into the room, his brow furrowed. Are you okay? I heard shouting earlier. Mustering a brave smile, I patted the bed beside me. It's nothing for you to worry about, honey. Just some grown-up issues. He settled next to me, his eyes searching mine. Is it about Dad? I know things haven't been great between you two lately. I sighed, my heart aching at the thought of shattering his innocence. Your father and I are going through a difficult time. Yes, but we'll figure it out one way or another. Peter nodded solemnly. I just want us to be a family again, like we used to be. His words pierced my soul. How could I tell him that the family he knew was already gone, torn apart by Mark's selfish actions? I pulled him into a tight embrace, blinking back fresh tears. I love you, Peter, I whispered fiercely. No matter what happens, remember that. He hugged me back, his skinny arms wrapping around me with a strength that belied his age. I love you too, Mom. We'll get through this together. As I held my son close, a newfound determination surged within me. I would not let Mark's betrayal define us. I would not allow Gloria's toxic influence to poison our lives any longer. It was time to take control, to forge a new path, one where Peter and I could find true happiness, free from the shackles of a broken marriage and toxic family dynamics. The road ahead would be difficult, but with my son by my side, I knew I had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. This was just the beginning of our journey towards healing and redemption. And I would stop at nothing to ensure that Peter and I emerged from this storm stronger and more resilient than ever before. The next morning, I steeled myself for another confrontation with Mark. As I entered the kitchen, he was already there, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper as if nothing had happened. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. Mark glanced up, his expression bored. "About what, Edith?" I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to hurl the nearest object at his smug face. "About your little secret, the affair you've been carrying on behind my back." He snorted derisively. "So you found out. Big deal. It's not like we've had a real marriage for years." My jaw dropped at his callous words. "How can you say that? I've devoted my life to this family, to being a good wife and mother." "And a lousy job you've done," Gloria chimed in, sweeping into the room. "If you had been a better wife, Mark wouldn't have strayed." I rounded on her, my temper flaring. "Stay out of this, Gloria. This is between me and your son." "Like hell it is," she snapped. "This involves my family, and I won't let you ruin it with your dramatics." Mark set down his coffee mug, his eyes narrowing. "Enough of this. I'm leaving for a week, Edith. Try not to mess things up while I'm gone." I stared at him, incredulous. "You're leaving? Just like that?" He shrugged, already gathering his things. "I need a break from all this nonsense. Don't wait up." As he brushed past me, I felt a surge of anger and despair. How could he be so callous, so dismissive of our marriage, our family? And yet, a part of me couldn't help but feel relieved at the prospect of a temporary reprieve from his toxic presence. Gloria fixed me with a steely glare. "You'd better not do anything rash while he's gone, Edith. This family has a reputation to uphold." I met her gaze, my resolve hardening. "Don't worry, Gloria. I can manage without him just fine." As Mark's car pulled out of the driveway, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I wouldn't have to walk on eggshells, constantly trying to appease his whims and Gloria's demands. Peter emerged from his room, his brow furrowed. "Is Dad really leaving?" I pulled him into a reassuring hug. "It's just for a week, honey. We'll be okay." His arms tightened around me. "I don't like it when you two fight." My heart clenched at the sadness in his voice. "I know, sweetheart, but sometimes grown-ups have to work through their problems in their own way." As I held my son close, I silently vowed to protect him from the toxic environment that had consumed our family for far too long. This week would be a chance for us to breathe, to remember what it felt like to live without the constant weight of Mark's emotional absence and Gloria's manipulative interference. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, this temporary separation would be the catalyst for something more permanent. A chance for me to finally break free and build the life Peter and I deserved, far away from the toxicity that had plagued us for so long. The first few days of Mark's absence were a welcome reprieve, but my relief was short-lived. On the third day, Peter came down with a high fever, and my world was thrown into chaos once again. "It's a fever, Mom, but he's burning up. I don't know what to do." I sobbed into the phone, cradling my ailing son in my arms. "We're on our way, darling. Hang in there." My mother's soothing voice came through the line. I tried my best to keep Peter comfortable, but his condition only seemed to worsen. Gloria hovered nearby, her disapproving glares piercing through me like daggers. "This is what happens when you don't have a proper man around the house," she sniffed, her words dripping with disdain. I bit back a retort, too exhausted and worried to engage in her toxic games. All that mattered was getting Peter the help he needed. When my parents finally arrived, my mother swooped in like a guardian angel, taking charge of the situation with a calm efficiency that I envied. "Let me take a look at him, sweetheart," she murmured, gently brushing Peter's sweat-soaked hair from his forehead. My father pulled me into a comforting embrace, his eyes filled with concern. "How are you holding up, Edith?" I shook my head, fighting back tears. "I'm at my wit's end, Dad. Mark's gone, and Gloria's been no help at all. I don't know what to do." Gloria scoffed from the corner. "If you had been a better wife, none of this would be happening." My father's eyes flashed with anger. "That's enough, Gloria. Can't you see my daughter is struggling? Where's your compassion?" "Compassion?" Gloria sneered. She brought this upon herself by driving Mark away. I flinched as if struck, her words cutting deeper than any physical blow. Was she right? Had my confrontation with Mark about his affair pushed him to abandon us in our time of need? My mother's voice cut through the tension, her tone firm but gentle. "Edith, why don't you come and sit with Peter for a while? I'll make us all some tea." Grateful for the reprieve, I settled beside my son's bed, gently stroking his flushed cheek. His eyes fluttered open, and he managed a weak smile. "Mom, I'm sorry for causing so much trouble," he whispered. My heart broke at his words. "Oh, honey, you have nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one who's sorry for letting things get so out of hand." Peter's brow furrowed. "Is it because of Dad? I know you two haven't been getting along." I swallowed hard, unsure of how much to reveal. "Your father and I are going through some difficult times, yes. But that's not your fault, sweetheart. You're the one thing in my life that brings me joy." His small hand found mine, and he gave it a gentle squeeze. "I love you, Mom. We'll get through this together." In that moment, my son's unwavering love and strength filled me with a renewed sense of purpose. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, I would fight tooth and nail to protect him from the toxicity that had plagued our family for far too long. As my mother returned with a tray of steaming tea, I met her gaze with a newfound determination. With her and my father's support, I knew I had the strength to weather any storm, even one as tempestuous as the one brewing between Mark, Gloria, and me. Just when I thought the storm had passed, the phone rang, shattering the fragile peace we had found. My heart raced as I answered, bracing myself for more bad news. "Edith, there's been an accident. You need to come to the hospital," the voice on the other end urged. My blood ran cold. What happened? Is it Peter? No, it's Mark. He was in a car accident. Relief and anger flooded through me in equal measure. Relief that my son was safe, but anger that Mark's recklessness had once again disrupted our lives. "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. There was a pause, and then the caller spoke the words that would change everything. "Mark was with another woman." The world seemed to spin as the weight of those words sank in. His affair, the secret he had so carefully guarded, was now exposed for all to see. I felt a twisted sense of vindication, knowing that his lies had finally caught up with him. "I'll be right there," I managed, hanging up the phone. My parents exchanged worried glances, sensing the shift in my demeanor. "Edith, what's going on?" my mother asked gently. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Mark was in an accident. He was with his mistress." Gloria's face drained of color, her usual haughty expression replaced by one of shock and dismay. For once she was speechless. My father's brow furrowed. "Are you all right, sweetheart? Do you want us to come with you?" I shook my head, a newfound determination surging through me. "No, Dad. This is something I need to handle on my own." As I made my way to the hospital, a strange sense of calm washed over me. The secrets, the lies, the betrayal. It was all out in the open now. Mark had no more cards to play, no more excuses to hide behind. When I arrived at his room, the sight of him lying there, battered and vulnerable, should have filled me with pity. Instead, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, knowing that he was finally facing the consequences of his actions. "Edith," he croaked, his eyes widening as I approached his bedside. "Don't bother, Mark," I said, holding up a hand to silence him. "I know everything. Your little secret is out." He flinched, his gaze dropping in shame. For once he had no snide remarks, no dismissive comments to deflect the truth. "So, what now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Now, we face the reality of our situation. No more lies, no more secrets. It's time to decide what we really want." Mark's eyes met mine, a flicker of defiance still burning within them. "And what if I don't want to let you go?" I held his gaze, my resolve unwavering. "That's not your decision to make anymore, Mark. You lost that right the moment you betrayed our marriage." As the weight of my words settled over him, I felt a sense of power, a newfound strength that had been buried for far too long. The tables had turned, and for once, I was the one in control. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would no longer be a victim of Mark's selfish actions or Gloria's toxic manipulations. It was time to take back my life, to fight for the happiness and peace that had eluded me for far too long. And as I looked into Mark's defeated eyes, I knew that this time I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The hospital room was thick with tension as I faced Mark, his battered form a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions. For once he seemed subdued, unable to deflect the harsh reality that had come crashing down upon us. "So, this is it, Mark," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging within me. "We're done." I held out the divorce papers, the weight of their implications heavy in my hands. This was the moment I had both dreaded and longed for, the chance to finally sever the toxic ties that had bound us for far too long. Mark's eyes widened, a flicker of defiance still burning within them. "You wouldn't dare," he growled, his words laced with a familiar arrogance. I met his gaze, unflinching. "Watch me." As he stared at the papers, his bravado seemed to falter, replaced by a rare glimpse of vulnerability. For a fleeting moment, I almost felt pity for him. Almost. "After everything we've been through, you're just going to throw it all away?" he asked, his voice tinged with desperation. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that echoed through the sterile room. "Everything we've been through? You mean the years of emotional neglect, the constant disrespect, the lies and betrayal?" Mark flinched, his eyes dropping to the stark white sheets that covered his battered form. "You did this, Mark," I continued, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pent-up frustration. "You destroyed our marriage with your selfish actions, your complete disregard for our family." His jaw clenched, but he remained silent, unable to deflect the truth that hung heavy in the air between us. "I gave you everything," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I put my dreams aside, sacrificed my own happiness, all for the sake of our family. And how did you repay me? By carrying on an affair with a woman half my age, flaunting your infidelity for the world to see." Mark opened his mouth, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Don't bother making excuses, Mark. It's too late for that. The damage is done, and there's no going back." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Sign the papers, Mark. It's over." His eyes met mine, a flicker of defiance still burning within their depths. "And if I refuse?" I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that echoed through the sterile room. "Then you'll be left with nothing. No wife, no family, no reputation. Just the consequences of your own selfish actions." As the weight of my words settled over him, I could see the fight draining from his eyes, replaced by a weary resignation. "Fine," he muttered, reaching for the pen beside his bed. "Have it your way, Edith." With a shaky hand, he scrawled his signature across the papers, sealing our fate with a few strokes of ink. As I gathered the documents, a sense of finality washed over me. It was done. The chapter of my life that had been defined by Mark's toxic presence was finally closed. "I hope it was worth it, Mark," I said, my voice laced with a mixture of sadness and triumph. "Because from this moment on, you're on your own." Turning on my heel, I strode out of the room, leaving him to grapple with the wreckage of our shattered marriage. A weight had been lifted from my shoulders, and for the first time in years, I felt truly free. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready to face it head-on, armed with a newfound sense of strength and resilience. Mark's betrayal had been a harsh lesson, but it had also been a catalyst for change, a chance to break free from the toxic cycle that had consumed our lives for far too long. As I stepped out into the crisp morning air, I took a deep breath, savoring the taste of freedom. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would write my own story, free from the shackles of a loveless marriage and the toxic influence of those who sought to control me. And as the sun rose over the horizon, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and possibility, a promise of better days to come, where I would finally be the master of my own destiny. As I strode out of Mark's hospital room, the weight of our shattered marriage finally lifted from my shoulders, I was met with a familiar, unwelcome sight. Gloria, her face contorted in a mask of fury. "What have you done, Edith?" she hissed, her eyes boring into me like daggers. I squared my shoulders, refusing to be intimidated. "What needed to be done, Gloria? Mark and I are through." Her nostrils flared, and she took a step closer, her presence looming over me like a dark cloud. "You will not ruin this family, Edith. Not after everything we've built." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that echoed through the sterile hallway. "The family was already ruined, Gloria, and I won't be part of it anymore." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might strike me. "So you're just going to abandon your husband in his time of need? After all he's done for you?" I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. Don't try to twist this, Gloria. Mark brought this upon himself with his selfish actions. He's the one who betrayed our vows, our family. Gloria's lips curled into a sneer. And you think you're blameless in all this? If you had been a better wife, a more attentive partner, he wouldn't have strayed. Her words stung, but I refused to let them pierce my newfound armor. That's a convenient excuse, Gloria, but we both know the truth. Her brow furrowed, and she took a step closer, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. What truth? I met her gaze, unflinching. That you knew about Mark's affair all along, that you helped him cover it up just to preserve your precious family image. Gloria's face drained of color, and for a moment she seemed at a loss for words. Then her eyes narrowed and she regained her composure. So what if I did? She spat. I was protecting our family, something you clearly have no concept of. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You were protecting your own selfish interests, Gloria, just like Mark, and I'm done being a pawn in your twisted games. Her jaw clenched, and I could see the fury simmering just beneath the surface. You ungrateful little wretch. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. You've done nothing for me, Gloria. All you've ever done is tear me down, make me feel small and insignificant. Well, no more. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, as if struck by my words. I'm taking my life back, Gloria, I continued, my voice steady and unwavering, and you and Mark can no longer stand in my way. For a moment we stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills, the tension crackling between us like electricity. Then Gloria's shoulders slumped, and I saw a flicker of something I never thought I'd see in her eyes. Defeat. Fine, she muttered, her voice laced with venom. Have it your way, Edith, but don't come crawling back when you realize the mistake you've made. With that, she turned on her heel and stormed away, leaving me standing in the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. As the adrenaline coursed through my veins, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. For years, Gloria had held me in her iron grip, using her manipulative tactics to control every aspect of my life. But not anymore. I was free, truly free, for the first time in as long as I could remember. And as I turned to leave the hospital, a newfound sense of purpose propelled me forward. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would write my own story, free from the toxic influence of those who sought to control me. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready to face it head-on, armed with a strength and resilience that had been forged in the fires of adversity. As I stepped out into the warm embrace of the sun, I couldn't help but smile. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time it was mine to shape, to mold into something beautiful and fulfilling. And as I made my way home to the son who had been my unwavering source of strength and inspiration, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. A united front, bound by a love that could never be broken, even by the most toxic of influences. The weight of the past few weeks seemed to lift from my shoulders as I stepped through the front door, greeted by the familiar warmth of home. Peter rushed to embrace me, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and concern. Mom, you're back. Is everything okay? I pulled him close, savoring the moment. Everything's going to be just fine, sweetheart. Better than fine. He pulled back, his brow furrowed. What do you mean? What happened with Dad? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Peter, your father and we're separating. His eyes widened, and I could see the questions forming on his lips. I know this is a lot to take in, I continued, guiding him to the couch. But it's for the best, believe me. Peter nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that belied his age. Is it because of the fighting and Dad's, his other woman? I felt a pang of sadness that my son had been exposed to such ugliness, but I knew it was better to be honest with him. Yes, honey, your father made some choices that hurt our family deeply, and as much as I love him, I can't stay in a relationship like that anymore. Peter's eyes glistened with unshed tears. But what about us? Are we still a family? I pulled him into a fierce embrace, my heart swelling with love for this remarkable boy. Of course we are, Peter. You and I will always be a family, no matter what happens. And this time, it'll be a family built on love, respect, and honesty. He nodded against my shoulder, and I could feel the tension slowly leaving his body. "I'm sorry you had to go through all this, sweetheart," I murmured, stroking his hair. "But I promise, better days are ahead." As we sat there, holding each other close, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a calm certainty that I was finally on the right path. The road ahead would be challenging, but with Peter by my side, I knew we could weather any storm. In the days and weeks that followed, we settled into a new routine, one free from the toxic influence of Mark and Gloria. I reconnected with old friends, finding solace and support in their unwavering companionship. And slowly but surely, the wounds of the past began to heal. One sunny afternoon, as Peter and I strolled through the park, hand in hand, he turned to me with a smile that warmed my heart. "Mommy, can we visit Grandpa and Grandma tomorrow?" I couldn't help but grin, filled with gratitude for the loving family that had stood by us through it all. "Of course, darling. We're free to do whatever we want now." As we continued our walk, surrounded by the laughter of children and the gentle rustling of leaves, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. This was the life I had dreamed of, a life filled with love, laughter, and the freedom to forge our own path. No longer would we be shackled by the toxic bonds of a broken marriage or the manipulative whims of those who sought to control us. We were free, truly free, to embrace the future on our own terms. And as I looked into Peter's eyes, shining with hope and possibility, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, a united front, bound by a love that could never be broken, even by the most toxic of influences. This was the beginning of our new chapter, one filled with endless possibilities and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. And as we walked hand in hand into the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and gratitude for the resilience that had carried us through the darkest of storms. We had emerged from the ashes of our past, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, I knew that our journey had only just begun. A journey towards healing, happiness, and the reclamation of our lives on our own terms.